What is object-oriented programming? Before going on to the definition of object-oriented programming, I would like to tell you a story. It is called a programmer's bedtime story. So, a long time ago, almost 46 years before. You must be thinking 46 years is not a very long time. But believe me, once you are in a programming world, it's a very long time. 46 years in real world is equal to 1000 years in programming world. So, a long time ago, when all programming languages were procedural, there was a programmer. But hold on, you know what the procedural language is? No? Then I first tell you about procedural language, then I will continue my story. In procedural language, you write statements or lines of codes for the computer to execute. You tell the computer what to do in basic steps. For example, C is a procedural language. The execution of a C program begins from the function main. You have lines of codes in this main function. The compiler starts executing these lines one by one. And for example, one line of code calls a function A. Then compiler jumps to that function A and start executing lines from that function. And when it is executed, it returns execution control back to the main function on the next line following to that function call. You have only variables and functions doing all the work for you, and all the code is in one main function, starting at the top and continuing through the end. And it's done. That was a little introduction of procedural language. Now get back to our story. So I was telling you that a long time ago, when all programming languages were procedural, there was a programmer. He was really very good in procedural programming. But a time came when he got fed up of this very simple, easy peasy procedural programming. He wants some different programming approach, something new, something very good. At the same time, another programming guy, Alan Kay, has discovered a new type of programming, and he called it object-oriented programming. This programming language was based on classes and objects. But our programming guy couldn't get his head around this object-oriented programming concept. The classes and objects were making no sense to him. Then one day he was sitting in his garden under an apple tree. Suddenly an apple fell on his head. Ouch! He started thinking why apple fell down and discovered gravity. There is a twist in a story. Because gravity was already been discovered by great scientist Newton. So what happened here? Our programming guy started thinking about the apple. Apple. Its color is green, its shape is kind of round, it has seeds in it, it has a skin on it. So this apple object has some specific properties. Then he looked around himself. My cat. It also has some specific properties like its name is Lucy, its color is brown, and despite of its properties, it can also perform some actions like cat can run, it can make a meow sound, and it can chase the mouse. So this cat object has some properties and it can also perform some actions. Then he started looking everything around him as an object, and he found that this universe is full of objects like sun, earth, moon, houses, cars, everything is an object. Even human beings are also objects. And every object has its own properties and some of them also has abilities to perform some specific actions. And one more thing, these objects can also interact with each other. So the concept of objects started making sense to him. But what about the classes and how to understand them? He also noticed that in this world, some objects are same. Their behavior is exactly same, but they are slightly different in their properties. Like all dog objects in this world have same behavior, like barking, fetching, wagging tail, and chasing cats. But what about their properties? Like name, color, and breed of every dog is almost different. So, how to solve this same kind of objects problem? Then he thought of an idea that we should classify the objects. Same object should belong to one class. Like all the dog objects belong to the dog class, all the cat objects belong to the cat class, and all the cars should belong to the car class. So basically, every object belongs to a class. Now, classes and objects started making sense to him, and now he finally understood what the object oriented programming is. Object-oriented programming. It is a style of programming that focuses on using objects and their interactions to design and build applications. Think of an object as a model of concepts, processes, or things in the real world that are meaningful to your application. So, we simulate real-life objects and their behaviors using computer programming. So, our programmer guy decided that from now on he will add the oopness in his life. I mean, object oriented programmingness. Advantages of object oriented programming. Now, let's take a look at some of the advantages of an OOP approach to software development. First one is easy to map onto the real world situations. Most of our applications are based onto the real world situations. So we can directly map real world objects like people, things, and concepts into our classes. These classes have the same properties and behaviors as the real world concepts they represent. This makes programming easier for us when we design object-oriented programming applications, because purpose of each object as well as the relationship between objects is already clear from the real-life situation. Code reuse and recycling. A second benefit of OOP is code reuse. Objects created for one object-oriented application can easily be reused in other applications. Easy to write modular code. In object-oriented programming, we write code in self-contained modules. You can partition the work in different objects in a project. You can make your code more manageable and easier to debug and extend. Object-oriented systems can be easily upgraded from smaller to larger systems. There are lots and lots of OOP benefits. A book can be written on it. So I'm not going to discuss all of them. Let's start some real object-oriented programming.